Okay. As I mentioned, as we saw yesterday, and I'm pointing out, there is absolutely no way that we can get any inkling what the Rebbe is talking about unless we enter fully into his world. Notice how many times the Rebbe says, it's impossible to say. But he does not really bring any kind of concrete proof why it cannot be said. He can't say that. Because in a very sensitive way it doesn't make sense. It's unconscionable that it should be like that. In order to relate to this thinking process, and the Rebbe wants us to relate to it, he wants us to think with our own sechel. We have to be into it. It's impossible to say that the same madrega, the Rebbe says the word madrega, chochmah, but intentionally use the word madrega rather than oyach, koyach, inyan, to point out precisely this. Every aspect of chochmah is within the madrega of chochmah, has a chochmah quality to it. Whether it is the initial chochmah as it exists in the nefesh, or the chochmah begolui, as it expresses itself in the kudas haskola, it has the chochmah quality to it. And as such, it's impossible to say that this same essential quality, the same madrega, should have two completely different aspects to it. Opposite, on the higher level, it is one thing. On the lower level, it becomes a worldly thing, a sechel. Impossible. Initially, the whole discussion started from the proposition that the Rebbe says, right in the beginning of Mem Ois Mem Aleph. In truth, is that not that chochmah is a yediyah sichlis. Chochmah is a sechel type of knowledge. And we discussed the principle yediyah sichlis, a knowledge that does not perplex us, but we can process it in our sechel. That's meant chochmah. Even though it's a nekuda, even the nekuda sich, even the nekuda is our scholar. But the nekuda scholar is so bright and is so present in our mind that it satisfies us. We were laboring. Now we got the point. Although we still have to go and dig into it and so, but part of the point. In other words, it's a real knowledge. Yediyah sichlis. And here becomes the dilemma. If chochmah has a madrega, that's my yediyah sichlis, no matter at what point, it's still part of chochmah. How can it at the same time this same quality of chochmah and be super sechel? Being that is completely above hasogin, completely that relates to etzem. I'm thinking all the time, things come to mind. In the long introduction, pointed out how Hashem, so to speak, conceivs, conceptualizes that which He creates. He does not create it, does conceptualize it piecemeal. If I'll need this, I'll put this. If I need this, He conceptualizes the reality of it. This is how it's supposed to be. So it occurred to me a good way of demonstrating it is a chicken egg. A chicken egg. It consists of many parts. There is no indication in the shell at all. How did it go inside and create this part and that part and that part? Were these parts created individually, or was it conceived as a chicken egg, period? A human being cannot do anything like that. This is a creation, with all its parts was created simultaneously. Because it was not a part, a composed element. It's a reality what a chicken head is supposed to be. And all parts come at the same time. Having said that, this is the level that chochmah relates to. Our chochmah. It perceives the real thing, the way God created it. Obviously, it's a super koyach. It's not a worldly koyach. In the world, they look at the chicken egg and says, "Hey, how did it get inside?" And therefore, we have this dilemma: how can this same chochmah be a yidiyah sichlis? How do you come out in a nekudas ha'askola? That it's known externally. On the outside, like we said, b'bchinas mokim zman, in space and time. The essential truth, it doesn't take time and it doesn't occupy any space. It's just an akudah, just an idea, and that becomes yidiyah sichlis. So the Rebbe concludes, after having introduced different variations, at the end he says, even to say that this is a process that takes place within the chochmah itself, of going step by step within the chochmah itself, from its high to its lower, that should explain this whole process. And at the lower level it becomes sechel, it does not explain it. And he doesn't say why. He says, this is up to us to sense why it is not possible to say. This is why this learning has to be fully in. Otherwise, there is nothing there. It's impossible to say, so what? Why not? The Rebbe is telling us how he thinks, and he wants us to think likewise. Yes, sir.
So the consideration of the egg of wheat being one reality is...
To remain on this call, press 1.
Should we give another chance?
Returning to the conference room.
So the way we consider the egg as being one whole thing.
A second, I don't think I make a bracha.
You did.
You did?
You
Thank
did.
you. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
Refers to chochmah. Is the fact that we say it's made of a shell and the yellow and the white refers to bina?
No?
No?
Okay. Okay, let's discuss the egg. The egg represents a chicken, a living chicken. And in this life of the chicken, there are many qualities. But these qualities are not created independently. The idea was to create a chicken within an egg. The concept itself is a real concept. Yes, indeed, but we are going to examine it outside of its reality. We might very well say that this part of the egg contributes to this part of the chicken, this part of the egg contributes to this part of the chicken, and so forth. But the chicken is not composed of parts in reality. This is the point I'm saying. The chochmah, the initial of the creation, is a whole creation. Like we said, the Rebbe created a human being with hands and legs. Were these independent creations? I mentioned many times an interesting principle. A kohen is not supposed to be, he cannot be a Baal Mum. To go to the Mizbeach, he cannot be a Baal Mum. What constitutes a Mum for a kohen? He's missing a toe, a little toe. What's a concept? Zero. A little blemish in the nail of the toe. Is a blemish. Is a mum. Rather does he mean unfit for Aved? Wow, what's he missing? Because in the divine concept, a human being is that complete human being. With 5 toes and toenails in perfect shape. That's what a human being is. Okay, so we went through various variations, possibilities. And we said that we cannot explain the phenomenon of chochmah coming down to bina by saying that chochmah within itself has the different levels and different gyrations. It comes from the highest until it goes to the Nekudas HaSkola, which is an expressed element of chochmah. It does that, but that does not constitute a relationship to be. So how did it happen? How do we explain the fact that chochmah is chochmah, at the same time it can relate to being? And it has the qualities of ideas sichlis. The very last statement in the top section on page Sameh Tzadik Hey, even at the lowest level of chochmah, it still stands above bina. It's a categorical difference. How then does chochmah ultimately feed into bina? AYIN hu. However, the principle in this is this. Hine yadua, for it is known, the chochmah bina nikro AYIN yesh. The chochmah bina are described and referred to as AYIN and yesh. Everybody knows the translation of AYIN. Ayin means a non-entity. Yesh means an entity, a tangible entity. As an introduction to this, we've said many, many times, what is the difference between a human being speaking and a robot speaking, or an idiot speaking, who's just repeating words? That's not really know what he's saying. But a human being, what he is going to say is first exists at a level of AYIN. It's undefined. This is just a truth. Then he defines it to the point where he can express it in words. But it goes all the way down to the truth of his nefesh in the form of AYIN. This is AYIN, and everybody experiences that. Like we said recently, that a person labors in a certain question. Mamish labors, yigia, until it comes to the Nekudas HaSkola. What is he laboring in? That's not the chochmah yet. What is he thinking about? He's thinking in the AYIN of this sechel. That's why it's such a labor. Because he actually doesn't have anything to hold on to. And he knows that if he interrupts, he has to start all over again. Chochmah and Bina are nikroim, are called AYIN v'yesh. HaChochmah nikro AYIN. The Chochmah is called AYIN. Ukmeisha kosuv, as the Pasuk actually expresses it. HaChochmah mei AYIN timotzi. The Chochmah from AYIN timotzi. The timotzi can be translated as it comes forth, or timotzi, it is found. It is found within the AYIN. Again, thinking into this posuk, chochmah me'ayin timotzi. The chochmah from AYIN is found, it comes forth. Is this phenomenon, that chochmah me'ayin timotzi, is this something which is recognizable in the chochmah itself? Or is this just a historical statement? This is where it comes from, but when it becomes chochmah, it has nothing to do with the sign. So again, we are thinking the Pasuk, we say no, the Pasuk does not mean to say that it's a historical source. It retains the union of AYIN even when it becomes a yesh.
To remain on this call, press 1.
This was the Mehayat Timotzi. Even as when we labor, when a person labors in the depth of his nefesh, until he gets a sechel. When he gets a sechel, it is not dissociated from that in which he was laboring. On the contrary, that in which he was laboring substantiates the sechel as he recognizes it. The AYIN, the fundamental, the truth itself, which is AYIN, I can't really, it's not tangible. That is the basis of the sechel, as I know it. And this is what makes me so sure of it. It comes from AYIN, not dissociated. It retains its quality as AYIN. Even as when you say he was born in Russia, he's a Russian. He retains a Russian association. You can't shed it. If a person tries to erase his roots, you have a half-masked person. Right, Yitzchak?
Of course.
You've seen these kind of people. I want to be an American. Ends up to be a caricature of a human being. The Habino Nikro Yesh, and the Bino is called Yesh. Kamesha Kosu, as the Pasuk says, Lahanchil Oy Havei Yesh. Lahanchil, to bequeath, Oy Havei, to my beloved, Yesh. This is something which is given on a conscious and a present manner.
I was wondering, what's the meaning that this level of yesh keeps this imprint of its origin, of the AYIN? I mean, I hear the mashal, but the nimshal, when something's gone into that realm of yesh, seemingly it's now operating there with definitions, procedure.
This is what the idiots are trying to imprint upon us. This is the evolutionary philosophy. You started as a monkey, not a human being. An interesting thing, in the natural world, where there are no prejudices, you take an apple that grew on this tree, you can trace it back to the tree where it grew. Or in this field, or in this environment, in this country. We use this roigim from Calabria, from Italy. It was a difficulty, it was all kinds of different rules and laws and so forth in terms of importing a roigim into Eretz Yisrael. The Israeli government, for its own right, wanted that people should buy its own produce. So they made all kinds of difficulties in importing. To avoid these difficulties, we took seeds of Calabria Esrog and replanted it in Eretz Yisrael. So halachically, or from a perspective of a minhag, we say it lacks the real thing. It still didn't come from a collaborative, but it has exactly all the nature of a collaborative aspect. And in fact, many people use it. And not many people. This last year, we all tried to use it because the collaborative had a difficult weather-wise and so forth. We didn't have a say. It retains its quality, although it grew in a totally different environment and totally different ground. On a tree. Yeah. So what you're saying, Shamir, is I understand exactly where you're coming from. But that is, should I say, a tragic error?
Well, it is tragic to disassociate them, but the point inside is that they are integral.
Let me point something out to you. We spoke about this, very interesting. The American construction mass production model was introduced and designed by Ford. And he introduced the concept of an assembly line. What was the concept of an assembly line? Very, very smart, extremely efficient. An assembly line is, he said, a car consists of X number of parts. These parts have to be inserted into the main body of the car in a certain order. So he figured, I can line up all of these parts and I can have the main body of the car moving on a conveyor belt, and as it passes various stations, these parts will be introduced to the car. Extremely efficient, extremely fast. At the end of the assembly line, it's going to be a complete car. And it was successful to the extent that they said that the assembly line would roll down a new car every 7 minutes to produce a new car every 7 minutes. It's a tremendous efficiency. A car has thousands of parts, not hundreds, thousands. And it would roll down the assembly line. But then, to our chagrin, they found out that the assembly line car is a lemon. It's a limping car. It moves, but it's a limping car. Eventually, all its shortcomings surface. And the dealer who sold it to you has an obligation to correct this and correct that. He tells you right away. Within a month, come back, let me examine it. What's the shortcoming in the idea? A human being can only build a car, not a part. He can relate to a part. Even a mechanic, not an engineer, a mechanic, still he has to know what he's doing. If you're just putting in a screw and it does not relate to building the car, it's not going to be put in perfectly. Or he won't notice certain shortcomings, certain misplacements. That's exactly what happened. So I read about this. The Japanese noticed this shortcoming. And they changed the model, and they said they produce cars in groups. They had this team produce a car, not an assembly line. A team of people, they all produce a car. And their cars have no blemishes. Their cars are solid cars. They completely overran American car industry completely. It's a completely different experience. I mean, I'm driving an American car and I'm driving a Japanese car. It's a different experience. You get into the car, you know it's going to move. You know it's going to react to everything that you do. Because they were building a car, not the parts of a car. Despite the fact that they can't put together from parts, but you have to have the idea of what you're doing. That's the chochmah. So that's the answer to your answer. Yes, we get involved in the, but you cannot be involved in the parts without recognizing what the parts, where it fits into the whole picture. That would be folly. Does that answer your question?
To some extent, meaning by nature of chochmah getting to bina, the focus is on, it enters into a completely different realm. So I guess we're saying it maintains the imprint of the whole purpose.
Let me ask you a very simple question that you experience on a daily basis. You drive in the city.
You doing what?
You drive your car, and you know the road and the turns very well. Can you possibly drive and be aware only of the turns without being aware of where you're going to?
I'll put it to you this way. An individual lives within a family and he has certain things he's concerned about, certain things he's happy about. Things that are happening outside of his family, outside his neighborhood, are almost inconsequential. So even the healthiest human being has a partial view. Once you're inside Bina, you don't have the whole truth. Yeah, you have an imprint that you're within a town, you're in a family, within a town, within a country, within God's world. But his knowledge, his thoughts that are concerned about the guy in the next village or people who are not Yidden Lahavdil.
No, forget about the guy. Your own home. Can your own home be completely isolated?
No, your location and being in your family, being in your village.
That's
perfect.
what we're talking
yes.
about.
Exactly, but again, and that tells you. Oh, so that is the imprint of
the whole where it's based on
reality that is now within
Absolutely.
the context of being in the context of a specific address.
Exactly. That's why I said.
Okay.
You offer a person a generous offer. I will pile all your needs for the next 120 years
Right.
into this capsule.
I understand. I'll put it to you this way, though. I wondered to myself, we have our concerns about our immediate family. Our concerns about people more distant become increasingly less, to the point where you're not affected by somebody else who might be having a horrible lacking in the next town. That seems to go against this idea that we're all one, that we're all within one concern.
That's correct. And here's a point to ponder. That this is a shortcoming in one's education, in one's rearing. A child, as he's being reared, as he's growing up, has to be given the sense of responsibility, a sense of belonging, association. And if he is not given that, and it is by parental direction and concern, isolated from it, don't be concerned about, just concerned about this. Yes, he is going to suffer in a lifetime. He's never going to find himself as a full-fledged human being.
If his area of concern is that limited.
That's right.
Right. I guess it does seem like one's area of concern, unless you're the tzaddik, is limited. You know, I'm happy for Shmuley here. He's having a simcha, Baruch Hashem, Ken Yabu. But go why? The tzaddik is concerned with everything and everybody that's
the tzaddik.
normal
Tzaddik
human
is
being
concerned from a different perspective. Tzaddik is concerned because the tzaddik wants the Meibashin's kavanah to be fulfilled. He's looking at it from a different level completely. But every human being,
right,
senses that we are sitting in this room, in this little basement. There is an outside. If we step out of this door, we're not going to fall over a cliff.
Okay, so that context is what we're pointing to, even though specific concerns about some Yidden in Argentina or some Goyim that are suffering.
I'm saying that's how they're concerned about the Yidden in Argentina. The Rebbe was concerned about the Chinese in Chinatown.
Exactly. And the fact that we don't have that mindset doesn't take away from this point that...
That's true, but even us little people, when you go down to Chinatown and you see that people are suffering, it would bother you. And if it won't bother you, there's something short. Yes, so the chochmah comes along with the beam, and this is our sheet today. Okay, tomorrow we'll try to do more.
Happy birthday to the Rebbe RASHAB.
That's right. This is Rebbe RASHAB's birthday. It got disconnected. How did it get disconnected?
We hung up. It was...
Oh, really? Because of it. Okay, thanks.
Oh wow, you got a whole...
You're welcome, by the way.